Hey everybody, and welcome back to Windies 2012, the show where I recount some of the best and worst that the past 12 months had to offer in the world of independent gaming. Today we're going to talk about some of the year's most noteworthy games, so without further ado, let's get started. Best Puzzle Platformer, Thomas Was Alone. As usual, there was a surplus of great indie platformers this year, and although I don't necessarily think that any of them hit the same highs as games like Braid or Super Meat Boy, I did fall in love with Thomas Was Alone after its release on Steam earlier this fall. Thomas is a simplistic game where you control a variety of shapes that have to conquer obstacles of various forms to survive in an unfamiliar environment. And although its premise is not necessarily remarkable, the game benefits from some fantastic narration that makes each shape into its own character with its own unique personality. Overall, Thomas Was Alone is short, charming, and features satisfying puzzles that made it stand out in a year that featured a lot of competition. So it beats Snapshot and Unmechanical as my favorite puzzle platformer of the year. Best Multiplayer Game, Natural Selection 2. When people think of what 2012 had to offer in asymmetrical gameplay, the first thing to pop into their minds is likely going to be the Wii U. However, for my money, Natural Selection 2 is both this year's standout asymmetrical title as well as the best multiplayer indie game released in 2012. Admittedly, the game is not very friendly to casual players, requiring a substantial time investment just to get familiar with the goals and flow of the game, not to mention the variety of equipment available to the humans and the 5 different types of aliens, all of which play very differently. On top of that, expect to sink a ton of time in if you ever want to reach competency as a team commander, where you switch from first-person shooter-style gameplay to overhead control reminiscent of an RTS. However, if you're willing to make the substantial commitment necessary to get a footing in the game, you'll find yourself rewarded with one of the most strategic, balanced, and teamwork-focused games I've ever played. Those looking for a more casual experience might look to the also excellent Orcs Must Die 2, but if you're looking to sink your teeth into a genuinely excellent multiplayer experience, 2012 doesn't have anything better to offer than Natural Selection 2. Best Puzzle or Adventure Game, Resonance. For whatever reason, puzzle and adventure games have never really been my cup of tea, and it takes a truly special game in that genre to capture my attention. This year, I was lucky in that Resonance completely fit the bill. Sure, the game features great visuals, an interesting sci-fi premise, and excellent voice talent, including the narrator from Bastion, but the really impressive thing about Resonance is its puzzle design. In sharp contrast to a lot of point-and-click adventure games, Resonance's puzzles are all logical and intuitive, and only rarely require you to paint the screen with your cursor to find interactive items, or try to combine every single item in your inventory to find out which combinations of items actually fit together. And although its fractured Pulp Fiction-style narrative is certainly an asset, Resonance beat Botanicula to become my favorite puzzle/adventure game of the year on the strengths of its puzzles alone. Everything else was just an awesome bonus. Best Xbox Live Arcade Game, Spelunky. I have to confess that this category may well have been the hardest for me to deliberate on this year because we've been spoiled with what has been a great year for Xbox Live Arcade. By my count, there were 4 games that could have easily qualified as my XBLA Game of the Year: Fez, Trials Evolution, Spelunky, and even though it ended up being ported to Steam a few months ago, Mark of the Ninja as well. All of these games are absolutely fantastic, and any of them are deserving of the honor. However, in the end, I had to choose the game that I'd spent by far the most time with, and probably had the most fun with too, Spelunky. Simply put, Spelunky's greatest strength is that it makes failing fun. Carefully making your way through the progressively more difficult levels, only to have your plans unravel due to a falling spider, unseen arrow trap, or renegade shopkeeper can sometimes be disheartening, but it's never frustrating as each death is absurd and hilarious in its own unique way. Although more than 99% of my Spelunky runs have ended with my character dead and alone, playing Spelunky always puts a smile on my face, even if I have to shout some expletives at the screen first. Best PC Indie Game, FTL. Although 2012 turned out to be a fairly strong year for indie titles on the PC, as soon as I played FTL, I felt like everyone else was just competing for second place. I'm a sucker for both sci-fi and games with roguelike elements, so FTL's spaceship management gameplay sunk its hooks into me immediately, and it took a long time for me to get them out. This is a game that is the dangerous combination of being both incredibly addictive and nearly endlessly replayable, meaning that you can easily find yourself, and I have, losing entire days trying to unlock the newest ship, beat the final boss, or simply pilot a ship called the Poop to a new high score. Quite frankly, although FTL may have come out of nowhere for me, it was immediately apparent that it was something very, very special. And as such, it's my pick for the best PC indie game of 2012. Honorable mention goes to Natural Selection 2 for the multitude of reasons I mentioned earlier. That's gonna do it for day 2 of Windies 2012. Be sure to check back tomorrow to see my picks for the most disappointing and worst indie games of the year, as well as some of the year's biggest indie news and the indie games of 2013 that I'm most looking forward to. Thanks for watching.